This video proposes that parental alienation be considered a relational problem in the chapter of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is called Other Conditions That May Be a Focus of Clinical Attention. This is the proposed wording for parental alienation relational problem. This category may be used when a child, usually one whose parents are engaged in a high-conflict separation or divorce, allies strongly with one parent and rejects a relationship with the other parent without good reason. The diagnosis of parental relational problem usually requires 5 criteria. 1. The child avoids, resists, or refuses a relationship with a parent. 2. The presence of a prior positive relationship between the child and the now rejected parent. 3. The absence of abuse or neglect or seriously deficient parenting on the part of the now rejected parent. 4. The use of multiple alienating behaviors by the favored parent. And 5. Manifestations of behavioral signs of alienation by the child. These 5 criteria are called the 5-factor model for the diagnosis of parental alienation. The justifications for the proposed addition. For the child, it's painful to be caught in the battleground between their parents. For the alienated parent, it's humiliating, traumatic, and extremely frustrating to be irrationally rejected by a child with whom they previously had an enjoyable, loving relationship. Mental health practitioners, legal professionals, both attorneys and judges, and alienated parents have all described the relentless progression of parental alienation from a mild level of intensity, when it's reversible, to a severe level when it's almost intractable. Adopting a formal definition for parental alienation will greatly increase the chances of its early detection, and more intensive research will hopefully lead to prevention of this painful mental condition. Historical context for this proposal. Although the actual words parental alienation weren't included in the DSM5, the concept of parental alienation was included in 3 different diagnoses in the chapter on other conditions. Each of these diagnoses paraphrased the meaning of parental alienation in their respective definitions. First, child affected by parental relationship distress. Negative effects of parental relationship discord on a child in the family. For example, high levels of conflict, distress, or disparagement. 2. Parent-child relational problem. Negative attributions of the other's intentions or hostility toward the other and unwarranted feelings of estrangement. 3. Child psychological abuse. That is, harming or abandoning people or things that the child cares about. The great majority of practitioners who are familiar with parental alienation agree on the basic principles of the theory. There may be disagreements on how to distinguish mild, moderate, and severe levels of parental alienation. There may be disagreements regarding the interventions for these levels of severity, but these disagreements aren't essential for the inclusion of parental alienation in the DSM-5. In fact, many conditions are included in the DSM for which there's a disagreement regarding treatment. The magnitude of the proposed addition. Jennifer Harmon and her colleagues recently published a comprehensive review of the parental alienation literature. The authors identified more than 1,000 articles and books that pertained primarily to parental alienation theory. Excluding the material that contained no data, they ultimately reviewed in detail 207 empirical research studies. The following graph demonstrates how qualitative and quantitative research regarding parental alienation theory has increased over time. More than 100 books have been published regarding parental alienation, most of them written by psychiatrists, psychologists, and other mental health professionals. Some were written by alienated parents or formerly alienated children describing their lived experiences. Peer-reviewed publications regarding parental alienation have appeared in the professional literature in more than 50 countries. There's a worldwide need for inclusion of parental alienation in the DSM5. Practitioners and researchers in many countries will benefit from standardized definitions and diagnostic criteria for this mental condition. If practitioners identify and understand parental alienation, they will be able to help children and families who are struggling with this mental condition. There's a great deal of quantitative research regarding alienating behaviors, which is factor 4 of the 5-factor model, and the behavioral manifestations of parental alienation, which is factor 5 of the 5-factor model. The acceptability of the concept of parental alienation can be addressed in 4 ways. 1. Large professional organizations have accepted the general concept of parental alienation. The large professional organizations that accept parental alienation include the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the AACAP, the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, the AFCC, the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, the AAML, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, the AAP. Many professional organizations have accepted papers and symposiums regarding parental alienation at conferences for mental health and legal professionals. 2. Major textbooks and reference books have published information regarding parental alienation. For instance, the Comprehensive Textbook of Psychiatry, the Encyclopedia of Forensic Science, and the Encyclopedia of Clinical Psychology. 3. A great majority of practitioners have accepted the general concept of parental alienation and the definitions of specific components of parental alienation theory. In one study, researchers surveyed mental health professionals. They rated the importance of 21 factors in shaping custody recommendations. One of the factors was related to parental alienation, which was ranked as the second highest ranking factor. That clearly indicated endorsement of the concept. In another study, the researchers asked custody evaluators their opinions of definitions related to alienation and estrangement. About 90% of the participants agreed on these definitions, including the definition of the 5-factor model for the diagnosis of parental alienation. There are several DSM5 TR diagnoses that may be confused with parental alienation in some circumstances, although these conditions can be distinguished in a careful clinical evaluation. 1. Child affected by parental alienation distress. 2. Parent-child relational problem. 3. Child psychological abuse. And 4. Delusional symptoms in the context of relationship with an individual with prominent delusions. Several psychological tests have been found to reliably distinguish alienated from non-alienated children. Some of these instruments were developed specifically for this task. Others were older, established psychological tests that were newly applied to cases involving parental alienation. The following are listed in chronological order. Baker, Burkhart, and Albertson Kelly in 2012. The Baker Alienation Questionnaire, or BAQ, is intended to identify alienated children using a paper and pencil measure that's short, easy to administer, and easy to score objectively. The authors found that the BAQ discriminated between alienated and non-alienated children at an 87.5% accuracy rate. In the table, you can see that the BAQ gave correct results in 35 out of 40 cases. The Rowland's Parental Alienation Scale, or RPAS, was administered to 592 parents along with measures of convergent and discriminant validity. The RPAS consists of 6 factors. 1. Campaign of denigration toward the alienated parent. 2. Independent thinker phenomenon. 3. Reflexive support of the favored parent. 4. Presence of borrowed scenarios. 5. Spread of animosity to extended family of rejected parent. And 6. lack of positive effect toward the rejected parent. Parents who reported either that a court evaluation or court findings had confirmed the presence of parental alienation scored significantly higher on all 6 RPAS factors as well as on the overall RPAS score. Burnett et al., 2018 and 2020. The Parental Acceptance and Rejection Questionnaire, or PARQ, was administered to 45 severely alienated children and 71 non-alienated children in Canada. It was found that severely alienated children engage in extreme level of splitting. That is, perceive the favored parent in very positive terms and the rejected parent in exclusively negative terms. The PARQ gap, the difference between the child's PARQ for the mother and PARQ for the father scores, was 99% accurate in distinguishing alienated from non-alienated children. In the graph, you can see the PARQ distinguished the alienated children in red from the non-alienated children in blue. Blagg and Godfrey, 2018. The Ben-Anthony Family Relations Test, or BAFRT, was administered to 16 alienated children and 17 non-alienated children in the United Kingdom. Children in the alienated group expressed almost exclusively negative feelings toward the rejected parent, while expressing almost exclusively positive feelings toward the preferred parent. These highly significant results are summarized in this table. An unusual feature of this topic is the extreme amount of misinformation that's been created by critics of parental alienation theory over the years. This information, which was expressed in various forms, has been methodically clarified and refuted by proponents of parental alienation theory in book chapters and in peer-reviewed journals. Nonetheless, the proponents of false information continue to make inaccurate and inflammatory claims about the topic. Critics of parental alienation theory are likely to protest vigorously to this proposal. We urge DSM personnel to consider the writings of parental alienation critics in a careful and somewhat skeptical manner, and to distinguish factual material from the false information and misinformation that may be found there. Conclusion: in the United States, there are hundreds of thousands of children and families that have experienced parental alienation. It's our belief that most of these cases of parental alienation go undetected and untreated simply because the serious mental condition is not well known among psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, and other mental health professionals, and because of the misinformation that's been disseminated about it. In some instances, the process of alienation is even encouraged by naive and poorly informed therapists and lawyers. This unfortunate state of affairs will continue until parental alienation is recognized by leading mental health organizations and then filtered down to the frontline practitioners. The most direct method for accomplishing that goal is for parental alienation to be accepted as a relational problem in the DSM5 TR, which will lead to educational programs for graduate students and trainees, as well as continuing education for practicing mental health and legal professionals. The Parental Alienation Relational Problem and DSM5 proposal was developed by Dr. William Burnett and Dr. Amy J.L. Baker. For additional information, including the complete proposal document, visit www.parp-dsm.info. Go to the description portion of this video for the complete proposal and to learn more about the Law Center, the producer of this video.